We're going hard in the paint today. Today we're going to go over some rookie draft ADP that I've made over the last day or so. I've been trying to grab as many drafts as I could. Real drafts, mock drafts, all the drafts that I could find that happened after the NFL draft to get you to ADP for your rookie drafts. This is superflex, and it's going to go for 3 rounds. That way, I could have casted a large sample of 12 drafts. Some of them only went for 3 rounds. A lot of them went for 4, but I figured I'd cast a larger net. That way, I can get it as accurate as possible, or at least get a good view of the market. And today, we're going to go over the ADP, and we're going to try and go over what people are thinking in the draft. We're going to go over it in segments. Multiple segments in the first round, second round, third round. Then at the end of that, we'll go over the whole draft as a whole together, piece by piece. But let's go ahead, dig in here. But before you do, make sure you smash that subscribe button right now. Only channel out here with its own rookie draft ADP, busting it out on the YouTubes. Feel free to screenshot as you go. That way you have the numbers with you. You can get this on other sites or whatever. But I created this rookie draft ADP for you guys. But let's go ahead and jump in here. So the first thing you're going to notice, 1.0 on Bijan Robinson. And this is the top of the class, the top 3. 1.0 on Bijan Robinson. All 12 drafts that I could find that were given to me, that I searched for. He was the 101. This is Superflex. The thing is, though, there was a lot of talk about Anthony Richardson being the 101 for some people, but that might be a lot of talk, or I just did not come up with those drafts yet. I thought I saw some the other day before I started gathering this ADP, so there are probably drafts where he is the 101, but I'm going to let you know now that there are a lot of drafts out here where people were just gun-ho going Bijan Robinson. I see a lot of analysts talking about going quarterback over Bijan, and I get the point. I've had videos over that as well. But I'm telling you, this is what the market is saying. I collected 12. There could be some other drafts, but odds are, in your draft, let me know in the comments that Bijan probably went 101 in the Superflex. Then after that, Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young. The quarterbacks kind of flip and flop a lot here, especially between Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young. Sometimes you'll see C.J. Stroud as the first quarterback off the board behind Bijan in these drafts, but I think that happened only one time. Most time it's a flip and a flop between Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson, but that is your top. I imagine in some drafts you'll see Anthony Richardson go ahead of Bijan Robinson, but I don't think it's going to be as many as what a lot of people make it out to be on the internet. I think a lot of people are gung-ho with Bijan Robinson. They've been waiting for him for years, and they're just really ready to smash that button. Superflex value is a thing. Shooting for upside is a thing, but they've been waiting to smash that button. Those 12 drafts told me that. I was expecting maybe 1 with a quarterback, maybe 2 out of the 12, but Bijan here, 1.0. Every single one. He was just on the top of the list of all of them. And that's just how it went. And then we got the 2 quarterbacks, and they just take turns with each other. Sometimes C.J. Stroud gets a turn, but mostly these 2 guys are at the top in the Superflex. But you will see Stroud up there. That being said, to our second wave of top guys, Stroud's at the top part here. Usually like 4 overall after the other 2 quarterbacks come off the board. But sometimes he'll go at like 2. Sometimes it'll be right after Bijan. And I imagine there are drafts. I imagine there are thousands of drafts out there. There probably is one where he is the 101. Probably somebody in Columbus or something like that. Then you got Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Smith-Njigba. And those 2 flip and flop with each other. A lot of people go after Jahmyr Gibbs due to the running back value. But some people also go after Jack Smith-Njigba because they just like him as the wide receiver. They think is a good landing spot. But as the macro looks, these guys do not get replaced by anybody behind them. Not too often. Sometimes you'll see Jordan Addison mixed in there. But mostly, this is your run here for your first 6 picks. And then going over here, our next 2 off the board usually is Quentin Johnston and Jordan Addison. QJ and JA here, as I got it labeled here. 6'13", 6.5. Usually on the average draft position. First rounders. Those 2 flip and flop with each other a lot. Zay Flowers sometimes get in the mix But when you look over all these mock drafts, Zay Flowers usually goes behind these guys, pretty much because he's got that Raven on his helmet. And two, Jordan Addison's no slouch, and Quentin Johnston went to a damn good situation. And there's some people that love Quentin Johnston, and then there's some people that hate him. But with him going to the situation with the Chargers, there's more people willing to make that bet. Jordan Addison sometimes will go ahead of Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think there was like one draft with that. And there was one draft, I think, where he went a little bit later in the first round. Most of the time, he's around this range. A lot of times, he's ahead of Quentin Johnston. But there have been some drafts where people really shot their shot on Quentin Johnston as well. Moving on down to the next one. This is a pick'em. This is like right before we get to the tail end of the first round. Around that 8 to 10 range here. And we have a mixed bag. And usually you get these numbers here because some people overdraft these guys and some people underdraft these guys. Zay Flowers is pretty steady here in this area. And then after him, you get a little bit of a mixed bag. Will Levis will sometimes be up there in the first round. And then sometimes you'll catch him early in the second round in superflex. You'll catch him somewhere in that area. And once you get past Zay Flowers in your rookie draft, after the other two big wide receivers come off the board, things get ambiguous. Things get very ambiguous. Like what you see here and what you see on the next slide, they just mix up with each other. You can just shake them in a jar and throw them on the ground. That's pretty much how that looks like when you look at a bunch of drafts here. A lot of people are spending a first on Dalton Kincaid. Landing spot, Buffalo Bills, first round. I can see why the market's doing that. Maybe you want to go running back, but then the running back position did take a hit, so I can see why they're trending that way. That is kind of high for a tight end, but this draft really did a number on the values as well, so that's why we're getting a little bit ambiguous. Zay Flowers locked in. Dalton Kincaid is up and down a little bit, but usually does not fall out of the first round. I think there was one or two drafts where he was in the second, like 201, 202, but usually somewhere between the 8 and 12 range, somewhere in there, moving up and down. Levis, this is kind of on the high point, around the 9.25. Someone took him a little earlier than that, but usually he's hovering around there to like the 201, 202 range. The next stack of guys, I call this the bumper. These guys are jockeying for a position in the back half of the first round and the early second round. A lot of times you'll catch one or two of these guys at the 201, 202. Some of you guys would think that Kendre Miller and Devin Achane are locks to be at the back end of that first round conversation, which I also see a lot in these drafts. And with them being up front, kind of indicates that they are a little bit more. But you'll see these guys in the early second round too. Some of these drafts, these guys fall to the early part of the second round. Michael Mayer is a big-time floater. He'll be in the early second round, but sometimes be in the back half of the first. The reason why is because this draft is very ambiguous. The tight end position is very stout. The running back position isn't as glorious as what we were hoping it'd be due to the draft capital. And a lot of people were in on him going into the draft. Decent draft capital, not as great as what we were hoping for as we were talking up going into the draft. But people are still drafting him in the first round. You see him go 110, 11, 12. A lot of times 201, 202, 203. Zach Charbonnet, he'll fall in some drafts. He'll go 205-ish, somewhere in the middle of that second round. But you'll catch an oddball draft where it'll go like 108, 109, 110. Well, I read that as some people are like, running back, second round. I like his profile. I see that he's sharing the backfield, but I know he can catch the ball in the backfield. I know he's going to get used. I know he's good. I like him. I'm still going to hit that button. So for some people, he's not falling. And for some people in other drafts, he'll go to the middle of the second. A lot of times you'll see him go 201 to 203 range. But he is a candidate to fall farther in some of your drafts. But he is also a candidate to get drafted earlier than expected. Devin Achane, a lot of times, late first round. But you can also catch him early second round. It really depends on your draft. And my guess is because he's a smaller running back. Some people aren't too keen on that. While others don't care, they love the speed, they love Mike McDaniel, they love the Dolphins, they're ready to smash that button. Kendre Miller, third round running back. The draft capital is good, But to some people, it's not super sexy. They'd rather take a shot at other positions. Maybe they'll go with Mayer. Maybe they go with Kincaid. And next thing you know, in their draft, he's at 201, and someone's drafting him. And that's usually how it goes. Kincaid and Achane do not usually fall farther than like 201, 202. Usually they're snatched off the board pretty quick in the second round if they fall that far. Charbonnet can be a slider, and Mayer slid a little bit as well, but not as much as Charbonnet does. Moving on to the next guy, and it's the cheese, and it's Jonathan Mingo. He stands alone, and the market's all over the place. He damn near falls to the third round. I think there might have been one draft where he went like 301, 302, and he's a candidate to go 201. He is all over the place. His 14.63 ADP does not indicate that he'll go at 14. He'll go everywhere in the draft. It just depends on who's pulling the trigger and who doesn't like him or what your draft is doing. But Jonathan Mingo, from what I see in drafts, he's all over the place. This is why when you look at ADP and you look at the list that goes from 1 through 36 or whatever, however deep it goes, you also want to look at all the drafts. You want to look at the range of outcomes. His range of outcomes in the second round is deep. 201 to the back end, early third. Didn't see him go in the first round at all. Saw him go early third. Saw him go early second. He is all over the place. The market is trying to figure him out. That's why he's the cheese, because the cheese stands alone. He's on his own right now. He's all over the place. These are floaters. Marvin Mims, Josh Downs, Rashawn Johnson. I would expect Rashawn Johnson to have a higher ADP. I see a lot of people talking about him on social media. But remember, 4th round draft pick. A lot of people look down on that. A lot of people don't like that draft capital, but some people don't mind it considering what happened with the draft class, how running backs are being valued, and he does have a pathway to success. There are some drafts where will go late second. You will not find him in the early third round. You won't find him falling that far. You will also find him early second round. I've not seen him in the first round yet. I imagine there are drafts out there where someone pulled the trigger on him at 112. 111 or something like that. Thousands of drafts out there in the world. But in these 12, he went early second, mid-second, late second, but he did not fall out of the second. Josh Downs will go in the third round, early, 301 to 303 range. However, you'll also catch him early second round. That's why he's a floater. He'll go early second round, mid-second round. Usually on average, when I look at these drafts, his range is like 205 to 208, 203 to 208, somewhere in there, floating around. There is some drafts where he just falls because third round pick, Colts, I get it. Good profile, though. Good production profile. Marvin Mims will fall as well, too. But not as far as Josh Downs. He's usually locked in there, middle to late second. Once the running backs start coming off the board, a lot of people will just pivot to Marvin Mims. He's more steady around that 16 range, but you'll also catch him around 17, 18, 19 as well in the draft order. No one's pulling the trigger too high on him. Usually, once the guys off the other slides start coming off, they'll start looking at Marvin Mims. Next is the mid to late second rounders and early third rounders. When you start looking at this class, Rashee Rice is all over the place. Some people pull the trigger early in the second round. There's a couple drafts where he fell to the early third round. He's all over the place, and I can see why. Goes to the Chiefs, second round draft capital, bumps him up. Older wide receiver, G5 school, bumps him down. Guys wanting to get the running backs, they start pounding the running backs. Next thing you know, a wide receiver or two falls. Sometimes that's Rashee Rice. Talked about Jaden Reed yesterday. He is steady in that range, 18 to early third round. Back half of that second round is usually where he's at. Like I said in that video, once the running backs start coming off the board, that's when you're going to be looking his way. And that's what the market's saying. Tyjae Spears, a little bit all over the place. A lot of people are pulling the trigger on him in the middle of the second round. However, he will fall to the third round in a few drafts. The league is either all in on him in the middle of the second round or they'll let him fall a little bit, usually like the 302 range. That's what I'm seeing on the market. Hendon Hooker, same thing. Superflex value, really. If they value Superflex, if they're taking that shot, middle second rounds. If not, he's falling into the third, and he is a big-time floater. Laporta, second rounder, late second. Usually steady around that 19 ADP, maybe around 20, 21 or so. but Laporta's really in there. Good draft capital, good situation where you can see him working in, good tape, good metrics to him, so you can understand him holding that draft capital. With that being said, I think he's a good value. I think that's a good one. Rashee Rice, in some leagues, he's a good value. In some leagues, he can be kind of expensive. It's just really where you're at. Really where you're at and what you want with him. Over here, this one gets a little weird. Tank Bigsby. Early third round in a lot of drafts, but you'll see him bump up in the second round. Eric Gray had a couple drafts where the shark jumped out of the water, and he got drafted kind of high. And then he had a few drafts where it was around the middle of the third round. A little bit higher than what you would think about him. Late round prospect. But Saquon Barkley's there. If something happens to him, people are looking for him to be the next thing. And then you got Jalen Hyatt. Fall from grace. A lot of people were looking at him being a first round fringe to early second round pick. Late second, early third. He'll go in the third in a lot of drafts. He goes in the third in a lot of drafts. Sometimes he'll go in the late second. It says 21.88. 21.88 indicates that he is a late second, but to get that average and get it that low, there are some picks where he goes in the middle of the second, and there's a good bit of picks where he's in the third round. That's the thing about it. These are averages, so you're going to get more of those second rounders in here that are also third rounders. He is another guy that floats, and I can see why. You can really see him getting air yards in the offense. Had a lot of hype going into draft season. If you're not adjusting draft capital too much for him going in the third, then maybe you're still taking him in the second. But a lot of drafts, he's going in the middle third. Tank's going in the middle of third. These guys are middle of third, but we'll jump the shark in some drafts as well and jump up that ADP. Next is, looking at these guys. These guys are third round picks here. Early third rounders. Luke Musgrave going in the front of the third round damn near every draft. Chase Brown as well. Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman had one draft. I don't know what happened to him, but he did not get drafted. I was going through the figures the whole time on that draft, but he did not get drafted. There are some drafts where he goes in the second, like in the last few picks, but usually steady early third. I think really if that draft didn't go nuts on us or forget about him or whatever, he's more like 23 ADP or something like that, 22, 25.38. That's the to that. Chase Brown, early thirds, like one of those first running backs you're chasing in the third round. Musgrave's always there. Here's some speculations we're looking at here in the third round. These guys are deep in the third round. There was a draft where Zach Evans didn't get drafted. Well, he fell to the fourth in that draft, but he wasn't in the top 3 rounds. Zach Evans fell in that draft. It's at 27 in ADP. I imagine it's a shade higher according to that draft if that wasn't in the taking. But he's also a speculation piece. Late round pick going to the Rams. The Rams are ambiguous. Cam Akers looks like he's trying to make a comeback. We'll see. A lot of people are taking shots on Kayshon Boutte in the third round. That is predictable considering his prospect profile. Deuce Vaughn going to a good situation. 6th rounder. Catch the ball in the backfield. 29 here, so he's more like a late third. A little bit higher than what we were going into drafts like. But still, speculation piece. And his running back class took a major hit. Another guys to speculate on. We're getting deeper into the third round. Almost pushing towards the 4th round with some of these guys. These guys are floating up and down. The more you get deeper in here, the more ambiguous it gets. Evan Hall doesn't get drafted in the 3rd round sometimes. Sometimes he falls to the 4th. Dell falls to the 4th in a lot of drafts. Darnell's about 50-50 whether he falls to the 4th. Izzy may fall to the 4th, but he's more locked into the late 3rd round than he is falling out of the 3rd round. Evan Hall, though, good spot if something happens to Jonathan Taylor because we've seen running backs do things with the Colts when he's out. Darnell Washington, athleticism for days. Tank Dell is up and down. He's more like a 4th rounder in ADP, but he has had those drafts where he jumped up a little bit. Here are the jabronis. These are the guys that are left. Most of these guys are falling to the 4th round or at high. They're going mid to late third round. Look, we got a tight end run here, so guys are taking a chance at the cheap tight ends, trying to see if they can nail something there. We're also catching running backs here on the back end. Sean Tucker's going later than expected. I figured he'd go maybe later, third, so I guess that's not too bad, but he's also going in the fourth round in a lot of drafts. And then you got some rando wide receivers. You got Michael Wilson, Tyler Scott. So those are our jabroni picks. And then going over the ADP as if it's a draft so you get a good visual of that. Something people really want to look at here. So 101, Bijan, 102, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Smith-Njigba, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Dalton Kincaid, Will Levis, and Devin Achane. So the thing about this, when you get around the 110 range to the 112, gets very ambiguous, like I've been saying. Pretty locked in. From Bijan to Zay Flowers, be mixed in a little bit. Different guys going different spots. But typically those 9 are coming off in the first 9. You may catch something different here every now often, but this is locked in. Then you get around 110 to 112. Things start getting dicey, start getting ambiguous, and you don't know what you're really going to get. Dalton Kincaid is pretty much a lock to be a first rounder, but there are some drafts where he goes like 201, 202, but he's not waiting on the board too long. Then we get to the second round. Kendre Miller goes in the first in a lot of drafts. Don't let that 201 fool you. He's got 11.75 average, but still, he will go in the first in a lot of drafts. Mayer will go in the first in about half his drafts or something like that. Charbonnet will sneak in the first as well. I've not seen Jonathan Mingo in the first at all, but he'll hover up and down this list, and even in the third round list. He's all over the place. The market doesn't know what to do with him. Marvin Mims and Josh Downs, those guys had a few drafts where they're around 201 to 203 range, but they're also in like 212, and Downs had some picks where he was in the third as well. Roshan Johnson, I figured he was a little bit higher in some drafts, but he will go 202, 203, 204, but there's also some drafts where he'll go 210-ish. There's also a few drafts where he's falling there. Jaden Reed will go 211, 212, but will also be snuck up the board a little bit in some drafts, depending on who you're drafting with. Rashay Rice, I figured he'd be a little bit higher due to him being the Chiefs. I think his price kind of almost appropriately, but I think he's a little bit cheap. I think people are going to jump up his ADP here in a little bit. I think he'll end up more in the 202 to 205 range than around 209, but he got slept on in some drafts. So really, it's how people are picking their poison with him. Some people are fading him, and some people are picking him at 202. So he is all over the place, kind of like Mingo, but not as volatile. Tajay Spears goes in the second round a lot. Draft capital is what I'm seeing with people doing. Hendon Hooker, when things got averaged out, 211, kind of seems right. Maybe for my preference, it's a little too much, but when thinking about the market, it kind of seems right. And then Sam Laporta in the back half of the second round. There are some drafts where he'll go up a lot higher, 205-ish, but there are also drafts where he'll fall in the middle of the third, but there's also drafts where he'll go 301, 302, 303, but won't fall too much farther. Going to the third round here, Tank Bigsby is a guy you're going to be looking at early third round in most of your drafts. Sometimes people draft him in the second. Sometimes you'll see that, but you'll get a third round running back here at the 301. Eric Gray is up and down this third round. He is up and down this third round. Jalen Hyatt will get caught in the second every now and again, but he's also up and down this third round as well. And then going down here, you just got a lot of speculation plays between Zach Evans, Kayshon Boutte, Deuce Vaughn. I think Kayshon Boutte is appropriately priced considering he's a late round pick. But again, it's hard not to swing for the fence here, considering what you have left on the board, because here's the jabronis. I call this the fat because we're trimming the fat off this. Most of these guys fall to the fourth round. Some of you guys here in the third round fall to the fourth round too, especially like Tank Dell, Evan Hall, Darnell Washington, Deuce Vaughn sometimes, but mostly in the third. Kayshon Boutte's locked in the third. Evans is locked in the third, except for that one weird draft. Same with Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman you can catch sometimes at like 212. Some people will pull the trigger on him. Sometimes he'll go 301, 302. But there's also some drafts, or that one weird draft where he fell out of the third. And then here, this is trimming the fat. Izzy, of course, because he's with Breece Hall. But you may want to pull the trigger at that price tag. We got a tight end run. some running backs. Sean Tucker, 36.75 average draft position. Technically, that's third round, but he is going in the third round some drafts, but he's also fallen in the fourth round of some drafts. So he is falling that far in the fourth round. He is getting drafted in rookie drafts, though. That's it for ADP. If you need to keep that, make sure you just go back and screenshot it so you have it. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button on the way out. The only one out here scrubbing together his own ADP so you guys can have it. No other channel has that. No other channels bumped out 15 videos during the draft process. You're getting 2 to 3 videos a day. We're starting to go over more clips. So once these rookies start in their camps and stuff, you'll be seeing these guys with their new teams working out, catching balls, whatever I can find. Little stuff, big stuff, whatever it is, it's going to be here. I want to thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.